And we're back on the Bill Face Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Ben, and on today's episode, I want to talk about how awesome the Philippines are. So, full credit to Mark Iam for doing just an infinite, endless amount of cool stuff for the Philippines versus scene. And his newest format idea, is it right to call it a format? Maybe it's tournament structure idea, is no exception. What we've all seen, the incredible prizes, the trophies, the cards, the play for a deck. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in the versus world over in the Philippines. And this newest format tournament, it might be the coolest thing I've seen come out of there yet, and that's one of the coolest places, and this is very cool. So let's just get into it. So I was talking to Mark about the idea of this event, and what he wanted to do is try to bring new people in. So the concept, kind of in a thumbnail, is think of it like The Voice. Each player gets to fight against these other players, and each of these new players that's competing is going to have a mentor. So the league it's gonna start in September, and again, this is for Philippines players. I want to talk about it because I think it's so cool, but this is not an event I'm going to be participating in. So this is open to all Filipino versus players, new and old, but particularly new, and they want to get these players registered, and then they will get connected with a mentor. The mentors are the top 10 players from the last season of the last season of the Build Phase League Philippines edition. To be clear, Mark Iam runs all of that. While it does have the Build Phase branding on it, I don't want to take any credit away from him. The ideas are his, the sweat equity in these events is his, so full credit to him. So last season's Build Phase League for the Philippines edition had their top 10, and the top 10 is going to come back, and the new players that are coming in can choose one of these people to be a mentor. Once a player has chosen a mentor, it can't be chosen again. And if the player wins the event, them and their mentor will both get prizes. So you're going to end up with a built-in coaching system, and the players essentially get to draft their coaches. So, hey, I know this guy likes to play the kind of deck I play. Hey, I'm friends with this guy. I want him to be my mentor. The concept of it is so simple, but so it's surprising that it hasn't come up before. Now, no shade on Jason Roosevelt, who has started kind of a mentor program in the Versus Collective, where some of our experienced players have volunteered to be people that new players can reach out to for help and guidance as far as getting started in the game of Versus. So that's a very good idea too, but taking that idea and turning it into a tournament structure. Now, as far as what format they're going to be playing, I'm not sure. On some level, I don't care. Whatever the format is, it's going to be cool. But the part that interests me is essentially what this does is it removes a barrier. And that's the thing that I think is so interesting. You know, Jason is a new player to the Versus community. I mean, I suppose he's been around for about a year now, but he still has his pulse on the kinds of concerns, his finger on the pulse of the kinds of concerns that new players would have. And this is stuff that we sometimes overlook, particularly in the area of how much jargon we use in this game. Because a lot of the terms we use in Versus are actually taken from Magic, but don't necessarily mean the same thing, or taken from Pokemon, but don't necessarily mean the same thing. And there's all these other bigger card games that have had slang kind of grow up within the game, and then that slang gets transported into other areas. So that's one place where a new player can come in and be like, what's tempo? What's value? What's card advantage? Some of these things are basic. Some of these things are a little more advanced. But if you're new to Versus and new to card games, this can be a wall of overwhelming, confusing, inside baseball type language. And trying to have the perspective of, I need to make sure I'm defining what aggro means. I need to make sure I'm talking about what a drop is. I mean, something as basic as what's a 2-drop. Not everybody knows that 2-drop means a character that costs 2. So remembering what it was like to be a new player, remembering what it was like to try to learn all these things is a perspective shift that some of us who've been around for more than half a decade can't really do without kind of concentrating on it, without focusing on, okay, well, if I didn't know any of this, what would my questions be? So to have a program like what Jason set up in the collective where new players know, hey, here's somebody I can ask a question of and they are not going to make fun of me. This person has volunteered to put their time up there for exactly this purpose. I'm not going to be annoying. I'm not going to get made fun of. And it makes, now in Versus in general, we have created a community kind of ethic, a community value around being civil to each other for the most part. Yes, sometimes we take shots and joke with each other and make fun of things. But for the most part, if somebody comes in and is like, hey, I'm a new player, I don't understand how this card works. This rule seems dumb to me. This doesn't make sense. How does this function? There is not a culture of read the card, moron, or dumping on new players, whereas there are some other games where if you try to ask basic beginner questions, people will just savage you. Like, why didn't you Google that and read a wiki on all that stuff before you come here with your dumb question? And I don't like any of that. I don't care if it's the 100th time I've had to explain how flight and range work with regard to the rows. I've explained that particular rule thousands of times, and I will continue to explain it because when new people come into the game, that is a thing that is confusing. That is an off-ramp. That's a point where people, I don't know how this works, shrug their shoulders and walk away from the game. And we don't want to let that happen. So in kind of a small scale, having these mentors available, it's kind of like a safe space where you can reveal your ignorance. And it shouldn't be this way, but for many people, ignorance is kind of a vulnerability. It's a form of weakness, although maybe that's not the right word, but people don't like being vulnerable, particularly in a group full of people who all know more than they do. If you join the Versus Collective, there's a good chance that anything you post is going to be read by 2,000 other people who know more about the game than you do, if you're a brand new player. And that can be intimidating. So having this mentor program really takes the edge off of that intimidation. Hey, I know this person is a safe person to talk to. I'm not going to get made fun of. I'm not going to get mocked. I'm not going to get told I'm stupid for not already knowing this. All that negative stuff, which again, we don't have that much of a problem with that in Versus. We have, whether it's the official Versus Discord with Upper Deck or the fan Discord, the Illuminati, or the Facebook page, for the most part, people are respectful, and the people who are rude to other people that behavior isn't tolerated by the community as a whole. We have a culture of respect. So, but you wouldn't know that if you're a new player. So again, I think having this mentor program that Jason set up, and credit to him for that, and credit to the mentors who volunteered, I think that's terrific. I think Mark, taking it one step further with the Philippine hobby league that they have going on over there, and having, hey, do you want to play in an event? Here's a mentor who's going to help you build your deck and help guide you through a whole event. I think that is genius. That is such a good idea, and I can't believe we're this deep into the game and it hasn't been done before. This is the first time. So credit to Mark. Everything I have to say about all the reasons why it's a good idea, I think I'm more or less covered. It removes a barrier to entry. It takes down that intimidation factor. It makes everything seem a little bit more collegiate, more like a community that's doing a thing together. And yeah, in Versus, there is a winner or a loser, but just because there's winners and losers, you can have friendly, fun competition without it getting ugly and without people feeling bad. I mean, I don't particularly feel good when I lose a game. I don't want to lose games, but when I'm playing games against guys like Bert or Stacks, or starting to list people down. Am I going to list the whole community? When I'm playing games against the Apex guys, or even some of the newer players that I've just kind of met over the last year, I almost universally walk away from it, win or lose, being like, man, that was a really good use of my time. That was really fun. I had a good time. Often the conversation is just about Versus, but hey, how's the kids doing? Hey, I heard your wife wasn't feeling well. I hope she's doing better. This kind of stuff. We have a great community here, but people aren't going to know that if they walk in the door and kind of feel, oh, I don't know who I need to talk to. So these onboarding methods of taking somebody from a total noob who doesn't know anybody to somebody who has a hot take about what the latest Team Apex podcast was, we want to grease those skids as much as possible. We want to, as a community, make it an easy walk to get from, oh, I picked this up just because I like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Wow, I didn't realize there was all this other card game. Oh, I love Marvel too. Man, I want to play in an event. We want to make that transition from a player who's never heard of Versus to a player who wants to show up at events as smooth as possible, because every single person who gets to the point where they show up for an event, they probably showed the game to 10 other people, 20 other people who aren't that hardcore, who do only play at the kitchen table. You know, it's been said many times that the tournament player is a small minority within our community. And I think that's accurate. I'd say, 5 to 10% of our total community probably plays at in-person events or online events and takes the game seriously to the point where they gauntlet decks and really work at honing their skills at Versus. It is a small minority, but each one of those people, like the reason I think the tryhard, the tournament scene player is so important is because passion is important. As a passionate player of Versus, I not only buy the cards for myself and show up to events, make this podcast, but I evangelize the game. I tell people, hey, I can't hang out that night because I'm doing a podcast. Oh, my podcast is about Versus. Oh, you like card games too? Well, here, let me show you how this works. And that's how the game gets spread. And that is, well, I don't think this totally lets Upper Deck off the hook for the, up until this year, almost absence of advertising for Versus. I am very glad that they have started to put some money into marketing this game. But the kind of marketing that's going to be most likely to convert somebody from being totally ignorant about the game to being a paying customer is the people who love the game the most. And the most passionate players, for the most part, not all of them, I don't want to speak for the whole community, but most of the most passionate players are the players who want to play in events. There are passionate kitchen table players, and I mean, Danny, who runs the Reddit, has been a blessing to the community for, running that Reddit by himself for the vast majority of the history of this game, and he is a self-confessed kitchen table player who really likes theme. Mostly the kitchen table players are less likely to be as obsessed with the game as the tryhard players are, and are less likely to be excellent evangelists because there's less passion involved, but not all the time. And I don't want to make it seem like I think the only players who can get new players in the game are tournament players. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying the more passionate a player is, the more likely they are to create other new players in their wake as they move through life. And a mentor program is an excellent way for passionate players to give back to the noobs and turn those noobs into the next generation of passionate, whether they're passionate for kitchen table or passionate for tournaments. It's that energy, it's loving the game, and that is what gets people to get other new people through the door. Like, nobody's going to be like, hey, I have this game I hate. You want to learn how to play it? That's not a thing that happens. It's, hey, I can't believe this game's been out for half a decade and I just now discovered it. Man, this is amazing. And I love seeing those kinds of posts on the Facebook and in the Discord and seeing how this game continues to grow. And the old guard, those of us who have been around for a long time, if we can figure out new ways to use our energy and our knowledge to make this new generation of players get up to speed as quickly as possible, or as much up to speed as they want to be. Again, not every player has to be a tournament player, but the more we can give back to the community, that's going to be the kind of investment that grows exponentially. For each new player that we convert into a hardcore player, they are in turn going to convert some additional number of players. And it's an exciting time to be playing Versus. The expansions are looking really good. It's crazy to me that we've gone through this period, a year without events, without in-person events. No shade of the online events. I think the online events are great, but in-person events have a different kind of energy. I think we can all agree playing cards in person in a room full of 30 other people that are playing cards at the same time has a little bit more of an energy to it than sitting alone at your kitchen table playing against one other person over the internet. Again, I love playing online, but there's something about going to a big event and seeing everybody and fist bumping people you haven't seen in a couple of years. It's cool. I love the in-person Versus community. And I got to be honest, when all this stuff went away, when this COVID happened, I didn't know what was going to happen with this game. And a lot of games didn't survive. I guess I've beat this drum a few too many times on the podcast, but I'm bursting with optimism. I feel really good about the game. I feel really good about the idea that we're going to be able to play in the same room again, hopefully here. Not as soon as I would have liked, but hopefully here soonish. And in the interim, we've got players that are doing really cool things to try to bring even more new players in. I guess I just spent 15 minutes talking about how cool Mark and Jason and the people who volunteered to be mentors are. So, community is a better place because of your efforts, gentlemen. Go win some games.